am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
Realized he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me.
In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Ooh, oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, when I don't belong. You say I am yours, and I believe, oh I believe what you say of me. I believe. Taking all I have and now I'm laying it at your feet. You'll have every failure, God. You'll have every victory. Ooh, oh, believe what you say of me. I believe.
Good news. Man, good news these days, it's like a rare commodity, isn't it? It's like a valuable currency, maybe even more valuable than toilet paper these days. I mean, we go searching for it when we don't have it. We long for it. There's a deficit in our lives when we're missing good news. That's why the other day, when I walked in to the house, Kirsten was watching this. It was a show by a guy named John Krasinski, also known as Jim Halpert from The Office. And he has this show that he's put online called Some Good News, because he just felt like, man, in a day and in a time where we are absolutely inundated by negativity and bad reports, and look, it's all real serious stuff, but he said, man, we just need some good news. And I got glued to the TV because I saw pictures and videos of people serving one another and literally putting their lives on the line to care for one another. There was a video of a grandparent meeting their new grandson through a window because, of course, they couldn't visit in the hospital. There was a video of a cancer patient who had just received their last cancer treatment coming home to a parade of people spread apart, physically distanced, but still celebrating that her cancer treatment was over. There was so many videos and so many examples of good news that just gave me honestly a lump in my throat, because I realized, man, I miss that. I miss having good news. And that's a very real thing that our world needs. In fact, these days, in a very tangible way, on things like Nextdoor emails and Town Watch on social media, and even when you talk to your neighbors across the yard from one another, there is a very tangible need, thirst, desire for good news. And maybe in many ways that we can't even fathom, God might be moving in this time to awaken within us and awaken within our world that we have a built-in desire and need within us for good news. And as good as the things that John Krasinski shares in his video, and they are good, don't get me wrong, but they are just an appetizer, just a foretaste of the ultimate good news of the gospel, the good news of Jesus. Now, maybe if you're a follower of Jesus, you were kind of waiting for that to come. You were expecting that, right? And I get that, because the good news of Jesus is ultimately our good news. But maybe you're watching this and you're not necessarily buying that. You're not necessarily all in on following Jesus. And when I say things like the good news about Jesus is even more ultimate than people putting their lives on the line, and flesh and blood examples of celebration and care amidst such a hardship, maybe you don't exactly buy that the good news of Jesus is somehow actually better than what you're seeing in what we consider to be the real world. And honestly, I've been praying for you if that's where you're at. I've actually been praying that this Good Friday message might be received by someone out there that's just more open to what the gospel might say and what hope there is out there, because we live in a world where we were counting on things, and you know what? Those things have kind of failed us and kind of left us wondering, is there really truth and good news and hope? And so I've been praying for you if that's where you're at. I've been praying that you would hear this, or maybe that someone that knows you and loves you would share this with you, and that you might be watching this, even if you've been far from God and far from Jesus, that you're hearing this right now and you're engaging with this. I've been praying about that. And I can understand that when we talk about Jesus and the good news, it may not well up within you the same sort of butterflies, that same lump in your throat that really good news in our society tends to do. But that's not because the good news of Jesus is somehow less good than what you're feeling when you see nurses and doctors laying their lives on the line. It's because we just aren't seeing the gospel the good news of Jesus for all that it really is. This reminds me, C.S. Lewis once received a letter from a woman who was reading his books, Chronicles of Narnia, and she had a concern that she wanted to share with C.S. Lewis. She said that her son, his name was Lawrence, she said that Lawrence was finding himself more in love and more attracted to the fictional character of Aslan than he was the flesh and blood reality of Jesus. And she had that concern. She shared it with C.S. Lewis, and Lewis offered this relief to her. Let me read it. Lawrence can't really love Aslan more than Jesus, even if he feels that's what he's doing. For the things he loves Aslan for, the fictional character Aslan, for doing and saying, are simply the things the flesh and blood Jesus really did and said. So that when Lawrence thinks he is loving Aslan, he is really loving Jesus, and perhaps loving him more than he ever did before. It's like that with the heartwarming stories that we see in our world these days. It awakens within us a deeper satisfaction, a deeper sense of good news that only the gospel can ultimately fulfill. Only the gospel can provide ultimate, lasting, transcending good news. That's why I'm saying this on this Good Friday service. The good news about who Jesus is and what he has done is the ultimate good news. Let me say that again. The good news about who Jesus is and what he has done, this is the ultimate good news. Now, maybe you're sitting there and you're going, wait a second. On Good Friday, aren't we recalling and commemorating the rejection and the torture and the death of Jesus Christ? If you were with us maybe a few years back, we had a Good Friday service where we really said we were going to focus on all that the crucifixion was, all the reality of torture and crucifixion that Jesus endured on Good Friday. We even had to put parental advisory notices out in the Great Hall for parents to know that what we're going to cover is the real crucifixion, and it's going to be violent, and it's going to be gory, and you may not want your kids to participate in that. And we weren't trying to be sensational. We were trying to see and look into exactly what Jesus had to endure. And if that's what Good Friday is commemorating, how is that good? Let alone the ultimate good. And it's because that the suffering and death that Jesus willfully endured marked the culmination of God's ultimate plan to provide salvation for humanity, to find a way to forgive and reconcile himself with you and with me. This was the battle plan. This was D-Day. This was the greatest point in human history up until that day. But it only really makes sense if we understand why it was necessary. Why was the crucifixion necessary? Why did we even need salvation in the first place? And why did Jesus have to endure the cross on our behalf? So briefly here, I'm going to share some biblical background so that we can try to catch the necessity of the cross. And this may seem like we're going back to basics, but as I said before, my hope and my prayer is that there is someone engaging in this that needs to hear the basics. Humanity, originally created to have perfect peace and perfect harmony and perfect intimacy with God and with creation and with one another, fell away from that because humanity made our own choices about how we were going to live. We fell into a critical condition called sin. No, we don't talk about that much, do we? We don't like that. Even that concept of the word sin may make you bristle because it sounds too judgy, too old-fashioned, too legalistic. And you know what? That's fine. You don't actually need to catch on to the word to know that our lives, the world around us, our relationships, our intimacy with God, it's broken. Somehow, it's not like it was supposed to be. It's far from perfect, far from the original creation that God intended for us. See, even if we're not crazy about the concept of sin, each of us can even look into our own choices, our own lives, and realize that there's imperfection there. There's falling short of righteousness there. There's even ugliness there. And I'm there too, guys. I make decisions. I have a thought life that isn't perfect, and oftentimes I will go, man, something's wrong there. I've fallen short from what really should be. Every time our temper flares up with the kids, every time we find ourselves just overcome by frustration and anger because we've been on house arrest now for weeks, every time we get so upset at things in this world that we lash out, every time maybe we experience sexual temptation in any sort, it's sin. It's falling away from the way that God intended for us to be in relationship with Him, with creation, and with one another. Now, I don't want to wallow too much here, but it's important that we recognize that there is a waywardness from perfection in our own lives and in the world around us, and from harmony with God and with one another. And here's the thing, we're all infected with it. It's a condition we all have. Biblically, this is even described as enmity with God, being an enemy. And that may sound harsh, but that's like a child who rebels hard against the life that his parents intended for them, for him or her. That's the way we've wandered away from our God. Jesus says in John 8:34, everyone who engages in sin is enslaved to sin. Everyone who practices sin is enslaved to sin. I want you to dwell on that word picture for a moment. Enslaved, meaning trapped, imprisoned, addicted, infected, caught in sin. And it's right here where the gospel, the ultimate good news, breaks in and shows us how we can be freed from this situation. I want to read really quickly an account that Paul wrote to his church friends in Ephesus. We're going to read Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. It says this, and you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of power of the air. This is everything we just talked about. We were stuck in the condition of sin. Following the prince of power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, like the rest of mankind. Check this out. But God. We were stuck in that situation, but God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which He loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together in Christ. See, the gospel breaks in to our enslavement and shows us how we can be freed through Jesus. This is what John 3:16 and 3:17 proclaims. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have eternal life. For God didn't send His Son into the world to bring condemnation, but to bring salvation through Him. And see, our problem wasn't just a physical condition. It went deeper to the very depths of our souls. So our solution had to be a once for all spiritual salvation that only Jesus could do for us. God made man was the only way we could experience true, lasting forgiveness that breaks through all of the mental, emotional, spiritual, relational impacts of sin and brings freedom and reconciliation and restoration with him. See, the cross was necessary because Jesus was the only complete, perfect, timeless, sacrificial payment on your behalf and on my behalf. And knowing that, seeing that, Jesus willingly pursued the cross. In fact, Hebrews 12:2 says, "For the joy set before him, he endured the cross." Jesus knew what he was getting into on Good Friday, and he pursued it. Why? How is Good Friday good, let alone the ultimate good? For the joy set before him, because he knew what was going to come about as a result. Reconciliation, forgiveness, restoration with you and with me. This is the greatest, most ultimate good news that there is. This, not some politician's plan, not even some viral vaccine or some new economic reality. Guys, this, the gospel, the good news about who Jesus is and what he has done, this is the ultimate good news. And every person in your neighborhood, every person watching this online, every person in northern Colorado, in our country, in our world, needs to catch this ultimate good news. I want to invite you, wherever you're at right now, to participate in something that we call communion. Something that allows us the opportunity to both receive and remember and reflect and celebrate the good news about who Jesus is and what he has done. We call it communion. It's something Jesus instituted on the days or even hours before the crucifixion. And he told his disciples to do this and remember his sacrifice and embrace it. So Christians throughout the history of the world, throughout all kinds of governments and all kinds of plagues and all kinds of hardships, all kinds of eras, have practiced this together. This is a timeless thing that we're entering into when we take communion. So even if you need to pause this video for a second and go find bread of some sort and a cup of some sort, I invite you to partake communion in this unique way. Virtually, I get that. But it's something timeless. It's something we're joining in on, followers of Jesus. And I invite you to join in that with me. In the night he was betrayed, Jesus took the bread and he broke it for his disciples. And he said, "This is my body, broken for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sins. As often as you do this, remember me." Let's take the bread together and remember his body broken for us, for our salvation. And then he took the cup and he said, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, blood shed for you and for all people for the forgiveness, the cleansing, the washing clean of your rebellion. By his blood, our debt is paid and paid in full." Let's remember that in the new covenant by taking the cup together. Guys, that is the ultimate good news. And I thank you for participating with us in communion in this time where we join together with the profession of faith of Christians throughout all of history since that first time Jesus instituted it, an act of remembering what he did on Good Friday, receiving it for ourselves. Like any gift, it has to be received by us, and proclaiming it and celebrating it. That's why I'd love it if you would take this opportunity, share this message with somebody that needs to hear it. Share the ultimate good news. And now, whether you're going to join us in praising and worshiping God and singing, or allowing the worship that we're about to offer to just pour over you as you sit there and take it in, let's respond to God in worship.
Under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire, standing next to me. There was another in the water, holding back the sea. And should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears a burden, where another died for me. There is another in the fire. Dead left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. Should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning? Either way, I will bow to the things of this world. And I know I will never be alone. There's another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the sea. Should I ever need reminding what power set me free? There is a grave that holds nobody. Now the power lives in me. Another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, I can see the in the darkness, as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens, as the space between wears thin. I can feel the ground shake beneath us, as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come what may in the space between all the things unseen and this reckoning, yeah, I know I will never be alone. Yeah, I know I will never be alone. There'll be another in the fire, standing next to me. There'll be another in the water, holding back the sea. Should I ever need reminding how good you've been to me? Count the joy come every battle, 'cause that's where you'll be. Count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. Count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant in the trial and the change. One thing remains. One thing remains. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love. On and on and on and on it goes. And it overwhelms and satisfies my soul. And I never ever have to be afraid. One thing remains. One thing remains. Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love. In death, in life, I'm confident, covered by the power of your great love. My debt is paid. There's nothing that can separate my heart from your great love. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. And on and on and on and on it goes. And it overwhelms and satisfies my soul. And I never ever have to be afraid. One thing remains. One thing remains. Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love.
Would you pray with me? God, thank you that this ultimate good news that we're celebrating on Good Friday, it's founded on your love. It's not founded on a situation we find ourselves in. It is founded on your love that never fails, never gives up, never runs out. God, no matter where we find ourselves, We are covered by your love. That is the ultimate good news that covers us and strengthens us and forgives us and redeems us and empowers us in this world with all that we encounter and beyond even this life. Thank you that we have a hope and a security that we celebrate on Easter and the resurrection, that you promise us new life in this world and new life even beyond this world in you, Jesus. And that all of it is founded based on your love. We thank you for that. We thank you for this ultimate good news. Amen. Love you, church. Happy Good Friday.